Let's get into it. Soul Not For Sale podcast. Coach Colin here. I'm just going on a little journey here, guys. I mean, we got we got Tucker Carlson, Victor Davis Hanson. I've never looked into this guy, and I know some of you who probably know this guy are going to be like, "I can't believe it. I can't believe you're saying that, Coach. How dare you not know this person?" And that's kind of how I feel hearing this clip of him. Now, this is the clip that that sparked the journey, right? This is something that Elon Musk reposted recently. But then I looked into him a little bit and I saw he had a Tucker interview. So I want to play part of that. But the things that he is talking about, he's talking about the counter revolution that is currently happening under President Trump. And I just find it so interesting because one thing that he says that we'll touch on is that to someone who's a revolutionary, okay, and this is not a good thing. We were in the midst and arguably still are in a revolution. And the revolution was all the woke nonsense. You know, it's interesting. We call it woke nonsense, you call it wokeism, but in actuality, that was a revolution that was being pushed on people hard. It's like a cold revolution, you know? And now he's talking about how Trump is the counter to that. So when people see a counter to that, they act and brand it as though that person is what they brand him as, you know, a Nazi, Hitler, blah, blah, blah. But let's just get into it. This is one of those episodes where we're just gonna go around a little bit and just kind of talk, you know?
Well, two things I think have precluded that so far. One is I call it the monastery of the mind. Say, you know what? I'm checking out. I don't want to watch the Oscars. I don't even know what the Tonys or Emmys are. I don't watch the NBA. I have nothing to do with Hollywood movies. I've just created my own reality. And the other is, under our federalist system, we're having millions of people. This is the greatest exodus diaspora we've ever seen in our history, where people are fleeing these blue states and blue cities to red states, and they feel that I'm going to recreate America as I once understood it without having anything to do. And so far, that's kept us sort of viable. But for them, that's not enough. It's never enough to have 2 million illegal entrants or 3 million. They got to have 8 or 9 or 10. It's not enough that Joe Biden is corrupt. It's not enough that he's non compos mentis. It's not enough that his agenda doesn't make sense. You've got to accept more and more of him. And I think they keep pushing the envelope, and these safety valves that I just mentioned, I don't know if they're going to be enough already. But right now, I think there's one last effort on the part of conservatives. They're going to say, you know what, we're going to speak up as we've never spoken up before. We're going to go after Target. We're going to go after Disney. We're going to say that we're going to go after the 3-gender movement. And we're going to try to win this election. We're going to try to win the House. We're going to try to win the representative. We just have to unite behind. And we'll see if that works. I'm really afraid. Everybody says democracy's in danger, but I think if they feel that they have the majority of the people, and I think the majority of the people are against this progressive Jacobin agenda, and they still can't find power, then we're going to be in new territory. We're in new territory now. And so there are legitimate efforts to rectify and stop this madness, and let's see what happens in 2024. But I don't think it works anymore just to migrate to a red state or to drop out of the popular culture. You've got to get control of the political apparatus of the country through elections. And your worry is legitimate. If you can't do it through fair elections, then what do you do? So I think this election, I know everybody says that each election is paramount, but this one is very important because we're in the middle of a revolution, and it's our only avenue to a counter-revolution to return to normality.
What would you say to the people who've stopped paying their cable bill and moved to Florida and feel like everything's fine because their neighborhood is fine? Why is that a bad strategy, dropping out and moving?
Because they can find you. And by that I mean Florida or Tennessee or living in Texas is a great advantage than living in California or Michigan or Oregon or Washington or Maryland. But eventually the federal government is not satisfied to leave you alone. And so when you go on your Google search, it will be calibrated by an algorithm to make sure that you have results that don't represent reality. And we're in a federal system where we have $33 trillion in debt, and there's only three ways to get out of it. You either have to inflate all of our currency, which we're trying to do, I suppose, or we're going to have to appropriate capital, which they've talked about, giving credit to Social Security years by taking 401k money, or you're going to have to renounce the debt, and that's going to affect all of us. And I don't need to mention that a lot of this crime is going across state lines, and you can be in red state Texas, and the federal government can say you can't protect the Texas border, or maybe it can redefine the American border as the border with Oklahoma and tell it Texas. You're not sending your illegals northward, but you're not going to be able to stop them coming into your state because we've targeted you for radical demographic change. So it's a stopgap sanctuary, but it shouldn't lull us into the idea that it's a solution. The solution is to take back the Congress, to ensure the Supreme Court is a traditional Supreme Court, and to win the presidency. But unfortunately, the Republican Party, which we all look to, I don't look to it very much anymore, has lost 7 out of the last 8 popular votes, hasn't won 51% since George H.W. Bush did it by bringing in Lee Atwater in 1988. And then we decided we don't want to ever win that way again. It was too ugly, they thought. So I guess the idea in the national level is to win, to lose nobly and never to win ugly. But we've got to change that attitude because we're dealing with people that are not democratic liberals in the way that we used to define them as Bill Clinton or Harry Truman or JFK. This is a new generation of, as I said, Jacobins, and they believe that any means necessary are justified morally to achieve their morally superior aims.
That's 100% true, that last part that he said. You can see it. I mean, you see it in the AOCs. I mean, you see it in all of them assembling in front of USAID, and they're claiming that Elon Musk is seizing power. They're claiming he's this unelected person, unelected billionaire, taking all people's personal information. Like, these are bull-faced lies. And it's very easy to just know that President Trump has appointed him and his team in the position that they're in to do what they're doing. Like, people play those clips of, no one voted for Elon. And then there's a clip of Trump saying, "Hey, Elon, I want you to do this. Will you do this?" And he's like, "Oh, I'd be honored. Oh, okay, I'll do this." And now they're doing it. But these are just bull-faced lies that they keep telling you. They keep they keep on telling you it's for you. I notice that they keep on talking about how this stuff that they're doing is for you. Letitia James, whatever her name is, she's talking about suing Doge because she's trying to protect New York citizens. Like that's the thing she's trying to do. They keep on doing it. They keep on saying it's for you. They keep on saying it's for black. Keep on saying it's for kids. They keep on saying it's for women. At the end of the day, it's just for them. That's what that gentleman means when he says that, Victor. When, like, this is a different generation of people. It's completely different. You hear AOC. AOC recently had an ad, and she was just talking about, she's like, we outnumber them and we have to assemble, and all she's trying to do is gather citizens for their own efforts. And that right there, that sentence that I just said, that's the perfect sum up of what Democrats do. And let me tell you something. Politicians do it. I get it. But right now we're at a point where that's what they are doing. That's what Democrats are currently doing. They're trying to assemble hardworking people with lies and a manipulation of reality and say, this is where your anger needs to be, because they need their voices amplified. It's not enough for just them to be upset, because when they're upset, it looks weird. Many people have pointed it out. Why are you upset about some organization? Well, some president appointed department finding waste, finding fraud, and finding abuse. Why are you against that? That doesn't make sense. You know? It's like if someone came into this house right now and they're like, I'm trying to destroy microphones. I'd be like, oh, no, what? No, you can't come in here. But then on the other side, on the same breath, I'm saying, no, I don't have any microphones. But you definitely can't come in here. What are you talking about? You know? Silly example. But you know what I mean. It's interesting to see. Very interesting. But there's another clip, because that was before Trump was elected. Trump is now elected. And also with what he said about the Republicans not winning the popular vote in how long, it kind of gives more weight in how monumental what Trump did was, you know? It feels great because if you're a supporter like I am, you're like, oh, wow, fantastic, perfect. This happened. It happened, finally. Knew it would happen, but it was getting close, and great to see it happen. But it's actually there's a lot of weight to that. You know, he did something. That's why they call it a mandate, because it hasn't happened in so long. And it was by so many votes and so many seats, and then the House, and then it's just, wow. Anyways, let's move on. Talking a little bit more about the counter-revolution that's going on. Let me pull this back.
And they call it the MAGA revolution.
Of course I have it on that speed, guys. Of course. That's how I do it, okay?
And they call it the MAGA revolution. It's not a revolution. It is a counter-revolution. There's a big difference. This is a restoration. Let's use the word Trump restoration. We don't really appreciate what we've been through with 8 years of the Obama revolution and the 4-year more radical third term of Obama, using or employing the waxen effigy of Joe Biden. A revolution that we've experienced was a cultural, economic, political, social revolution. It was very similar to the French Revolution under the Robespierre brothers. We should remember what they tried to do. They changed the days of the week. They renamed things. They tore down statues. They went after the church. Does this sound familiar? This revolution that we've experienced, everything was up for sale. Everything was negotiable. We invented a third gender and rammed it down people's throats. We tore down statues. We said 1776 was no longer the foundational date. It was 1619. We changed the very mechanism that we vote. We went from 70% of the electorate voting on election day to 70% of the electorate not doing that, either through mail-in or early voting. That was a radical change that had no discussion. It was done by fiat. It was incredible. We looked at girls' sports and we destroyed it. We said that transgendered biological males that were now transgendered females could compete. They won over 600 medals they took away from hardworking female athletes. We had drag shows among young children. It was an effort to change the entire Constitution. We forget that. They were trying to bring in Puerto Rico as a state and Washington, D.C. to get 4 instant senators. They were proud. They said that they were going to pack the Supreme Court. It hadn't been tried since 1937. And it was a object of disgrace ever since, but they were proud to try it again. They talked about making states, the Senate, look like the House. They wanted, and a lot of them were advocating it was not fair that one senator in Wyoming, to take one example, is worth 250,000 votes, but a senator in California represented 20 million. They wanted to change the makeup of the Senate. They wanted to get rid of the Senate filibuster. Remember that. They wanted to bring back neo-Confederate nullification. 600 jurisdictions in the manner of South Carolina in 1832 or on the edge of the Civil War in 1860 when neo-Confederate Southern states said the federal government's law does not apply to us. Tariffs, Yankee tariffs, no, we were going to override them. Andrew Jackson almost invaded the Carolinas over that, South Carolina. And so these jurisdictions said, federal law doesn't apply here. We're exempt. We have our own laws. Federal immigration law does not apply here. It applies everywhere else to you, but not to us. So this was a revolutionary movement. Movies were different. Sports were different. Take a knee. And Donald Trump came in, and it was not sufficient to say we're going to stop the madness of $37 billion. We're going to stop the madness of being short 40 or 50,000 military recruits because of this DI, coupled with the humiliation in Kabul. We're going to stop the appeasement of China. But that wasn't all. He said, the government is broke. We're going to go through all of these agencies. And finally, for the first time in the history of this country, when somebody says they're going to cut federal spending and drain the swamp or cut the administration, we're going to do it. And there's going to be no changing names except to go back to traditional names. And we're not going to topple statues. And if you break the law and you're on campus and you're on a student visa, you're going to go back home. So we're in the midst of a counter-revolution. It's not revolutionary. You know what it is? It's a return to normalcy. It's a return to common sense. It only looks revolutionary to revolutionaries. But to the rest of the people, it is a counter-revolution to restore normalcy and bring the country from the far left fringes back home again.
Man, well said. Really well said. I couldn't agree with that more. I mean, I guess when you really break down everything he said, I mean, this is, I just probably just named this episode how Donald Trump stopped the woke revolution. I mean, but it's still going, but you know what I mean. I mean, you're seeing it as well. You know, he's taking steps, quick steps as well. Steps with a very long gait in between. He's not playing around, but you know, even as you hear him say all of that, you know, it becomes really hard to deny that there's some kind of, I mean, there is no denying it. There's some kind of attack within. I mean, he named everything. He broke everything down. How they were doing it, what they were going after, TV, movies, sports, the way that government worked, the way certain subsets and things in the government all worked. They were trying to change things radically, and they were succeeding. And it started with Obama, you know? And of course it started with Obama. You know, I've talked about this type of stuff at length. You know, even as he was talking about all this, you know, one thing he said in the first clip was you have to accept more and more when he was talking about, you know, even though Biden's policies aren't making any sense, they're just making you accept more and more. And that is something that is done it's one of the rules for radicals, is that you're going to keep on pushing forward. You know, not even rules for radicals. It goes back to Jordan Peterson. You know, Jordan Peterson talked about something just like this. He talked about how people get pushed into things. You guys know what I'm talking about? Jordan Peterson. Let's say Jordan Peterson. Step by step. Just like how people get pushed into totalitarian societies. Yeah.
Low enough. Have a low enough bar. Why do you mean that?
Well, let's say you've got a kid and you want the kid to improve. You don't.
No. That's not it. Although I will save that video. That's not it. I'll go to YouTube and find it. But basically, he talks about, you know, they push you right until the point of where you protest. You stand up and you say, no more. And then they back off. But you don't, I'll just explain it. But you don't actually take back the steps, right? So they've pushed a large bit, and people would stop and say, hold on a second. And they'll say, oh, okay. and they move right back. But you don't move back. And then later on, they push you some more. And you say, hold on a second, right? Start with the washrooms. Now they're starting with the change rooms. Now it's just right into sports. You know? They keep pushing. And when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about like gender and stuff. And you don't correct. And then before you know it, they've given you 10 different pushes throughout the past 4 years, throughout the past administration, to the point where there are, and I got no problem with them, but there's transgender people in the White House flashing, lifting their shirts and flashing. And everybody's just like, good, solid. There's a guy who's stealing people's clothes from an airport, and he was the head of getting rid of nuclear waste. That was a real person. What was his name? Sam Britton or something like that? Britain or something like that? He was a real person. Would wear a dress, so feminine, lower, masculine, up, have a beard and stuff. He was stealing people's clothes from the airport multiple occasions. And they were like, that's fine. But anyway, back to what I was saying. They keep pushing, and before you know it, you're just in this place where everything is so unrecognizable, and you can't say certain things, and so many different things have been stifled. And the thing with Trump is he started taking the steps back. There was no more push and you stay there, and we'll push you again and you stay there, and you push you again. The second Trump got into office, he was like, we're how many steps back? Okay, let's go. And we're not even there yet to where we're meeting up again. That's going to happen, But he's taken all the steps back, and you're starting to see it everywhere. That's why you saw a sweeping, just companies getting rid of their DEI. Some company, most of the companies you've heard, like Target, they weren't even approached by the Trump administration. Everybody just kind of gets the memo. They're like, oh, okay, I guess we can. I didn't even want to do this. We spent $50 million on this. It was going to be 25 million for 2025. Why are we spending this money? Let's not do it anymore. The government doesn't even want to do it anymore. Why are we doing it? It just shows that before they were getting pressure. They were getting pushed. And there was no protests. So they get pushed some more. There's no protests. There's pushed some more. It's weird. It's weird to see what's going on. One thing that Victor said that he alluded to is why you can't just move to a red state. That's exactly what I did. So I felt attacked there, but it's very true, because even now where I'm at, I noticed that it has come here. I actually have a joke that I tell on stage where I talk about Austin having these patches of LA. You're walking through Austin and everything's all good, and then all of a sudden it's like you're in LA, and you're like, well, what's going on here? And then you walk a little further and you see a Trump sign, you're like, okay, I'm back. You walk a little further and the Biden Harris sign, you're like, whoa, where am I? You smell soy milk everywhere. You can smell it. It's thick. Oh. These pockets of LA. So he's right. The woke will come for you. You can't just ignore it. But you also can't. I guess what you have to do is say something, because you never want things to go left to where you're, doing violence. Like, violence is never the answer, in my opinion. So I guess it is that you have to say something. And that is true with societies that have faced communist regimes or takeovers, that when it first started, and I think this is Soviet Russia I'm thinking of. There's been some examples. But when it first started, there would be people who would say something, and those people, even if they were a small amount of them, a minority, the fact, psychologically with people, the fact that somebody is opposing what's going on, like example with all this woke nonsense, the fact that someone is opposing makes it so other people kind of wake up and they don't fall too much under the spell of what's happening. You know, like Riley Gaines woke a lot of people up. There was a lot of girls who at one point they were against Leah Thomas entering, and then they had a vote. Maybe this wasn't even about Leah Thomas, but it was somebody, and they had a vote, and the vote was going to be in secret, just like, okay, who wants it? But then they were like, no, the vote has to be done in person, has to be done in front of the person, and that person is going to give a speech beforehand. And then all of a sudden they all kind of backed down, and then it happened, and then Leah Thomas came in, and there's people in the change room and blah blah blah, this whole thing that happened, right? But the fact that she stood up, it made a lot of people wake up and go, oh yeah, no, that's messed up. But if you don't have those people who kind of just say something, you know, even though they seem like a-holes or whatever, you know, it's uncomfortable to have to say something around a bunch of people who are being quiet, you know, or believe something completely opposite. It's hard to do it, but it's necessary because it helps everybody wake up. You know, as people fall asleep, there has to be someone there to nudge them awake, or else they will fall too much asleep, and then they end up with blue hair and a wild looking nose ring that attaches to their ear and then attaches to their chain wallet, and then that's it. You know, it's interesting. Very, very interesting when you think about it. And Trump is now that person. And getting back to that, he's now that person who is like, I'm signing an executive order. No more men inside of women's sports. And there is millions of people who are like, yeah, what is that? So many. But if no one said anything and you had a president who was all for it, a lot of people would be like, well, what's the problem? I mean, you know, don't want to be a bigot and blah, 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 and all the woke speak that's been going on the past 4 years. But because you have this president who's like, this needs to stop, other people go, oh, this needs to stop. Company heads are going, oh, yeah, stop this. Yeah. We don't need pronouns. We need to get focused. We need to hit the bottom line. Can we get back to just being greedy? It's probably so many companies where the high executives are like, can we get back to just being greedy? This is getting ridiculous, guys. Am I right? I just want to go back to figuring out what kind of yacht I'm going to buy. Thank God for President Trump. You know, I'm tired of being compassionate. I'm tired of acting like I'm compassionate. We used to have to do it just during Black History Month and Pride Month, and now it's like a year-long thing. I can't keep this up, guys. Guys, I can't keep this up. I say the N-word when I'm around my friends. Do you understand me? I say it a lot. Someone's going to catch me eventually. We got to stop this charade. Oh, man. I'm kidding. I don't think people are like that. But if you are, you're kind of cool. A little bit. I mean, but yeah, that's how Trump is fighting all this. But helping people combat it. But again, like I said, it's still going on. Like there's this whole thing. Check this out.
Baltimore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to agree with my colleague from Harford County. Condoms for kiddies. This goes too far. So next year we're going to have a bill regulating what can go in these condom machines. What color can the wrappers be? What words can go on the wrappers? I mean, imagine walking into preschool with your 3, 4, 5-year-olds. You walk by the machine and they say, Mommy, Daddy, what's in that machine? Or they're learning to read. And you're having to explain to them what those words mean. This is the over-sexualization of our children.
Now, what she's talking about is they want machines that dispense these things. So basically, lawmakers have officially lost their mind. This is the woman that's speaking. She wrote this, They're going to have these vending machines in schools from preschool to high school. Yes, you read that right. Thanks to something called HB 380. And it's a wild bill. They want them in elementary schools. They want them to be colorful. They want them to be in hallways of middle schools. Yeah. So this stuff's not stopping, right? But now, at least with President Trump, you're going to have a majority. Like, this woman feels okay to speak out about this. And maybe she would have done it without President Trump, of course. But there's always those voices that need to speak up for everybody else to kind of understand that there is opposing opinions. And the thing that everybody's just going along with may not be the thing. But also, the fact that they're even trying to do what she's talking about, that speaks more to this revolution that Victor said that we were in right now. This revolution, and Trump being the counter-revolution. And it goes right back to what I talked about before. Last week I was talking about socialism, hedonism, anarchy, and how they've all joined hands recently, and they've all been able to do that through the left. Joining the left, they all kind of found each other and understood they had this common goal of destabilization and not wanting to have to answer to anyone, and also in the same breath want the people that they do not want to answer to pay their way and accept them as they are, all at the same time. It's actually quite a feat. This goes in line with that, because a good part of that, when we talk about, I talked about those three things all mixing together and being really demonic, and this goes right in line with that. It's the same type of thing. It's that destabilization, but not destabilization as much as it is a desensitizing, right? And it's not just desensitizing for the kids, because that's the first thing you think about in that. It's desensitizing for the parents, and just forget about that exact bill and just think of society. What they're looking for is for you to become more accepting of whatever they say. That's what it is at the heart of it. They'll do it through weird bills, and this person wants to identify, and this person does this, and this guy has cat ears, this guy's wearing a dog mask, and yeah, there's a leash on him, and what's the big deal, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, they do it through all that, but it's getting you to just accept everything. And what they're looking for in your acceptance of everything is for them to be able to amass power. Again, going back to what Victor said, this is a different generation of people. This is a different generation of the left. I had a conversation with Jimmy Dore. I interviewed him once, and I was saying how he's on the left, and he's like, and he was like, no. He's like, the Democrats today and the progressives, they're not the left. He goes, the left is what I remember, and I was like, no, I'm like, progressives. I'm like, whatever you want to call it, it's all the left. He's like, no, it's not. I'm like, yeah, it is. It is. It 100% is. I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, I had a conversation with him about that. It's just interesting to see what they're trying to. Sorry, I was saying it was a different generation. So he's part of that generation where there's bleeding heart liberals, hippies, body autonomy, all that good stuff that the left used to be about. Freedom of speech. Now it's a different type of leftists in the world, where they're not really for freedom of speech, and they kind of want you very separated, and they're kind of into Lenin, and they're kind of into Marx, and they kind of think that the world should be run that way, and they want to demonize people who make money, or demonize people who want to start businesses, because those people are capitalists, and they connect that to imperialism, But it's like, when you look at those things, what is the alternative? Again, it goes back to the anarchy. It goes back to the socialism. It goes back to the hedonism. He's right, man. We have been in the midst of a revolution, and it's happening from within. It's not It's not being, as much as people say, Yuri Bezmenov. Do you guys know Yuri Bezmenov? Where he talked about what Russia was trying to do, and they were going to erode the school system and all sorts of things like that. As much as you can blame other countries for sure, especially with the ability to have troll farms and whatnot now, you got to look around, and they can't all be paid by Russia. You're seeing these AOCs and these new, I want to say Ryan Garcia, but I know that's not his name. But he's a new guy in Congress. He's like a male AOC. And you're just seeing Hakeem Jeffries. You're just seeing all these people. They can't all be paid off. Something else is happening, and it's all from within. I have more clips here that I should be playing for you guys. This is also a part of what I'm talking about. This woke revolution. NBC Universal agreed to pay a $30 million defamation lawsuit after the MSNBC talent, they made some defamatory remarks about a doctor. It was Chris Hayes, who you see here, Rachel Maddow, who you see here, Nicole Wallace here, and Jacob Soberoff. So they all made these remarks. Now they got to pay $30 million. The doctor was defamed. He received death threats, bomb threats, and he lost his job. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. So this is going to continue, right? This is another arm of everything, right? These people here. Then there's also this guy, Elon Musk, reposted this. He said it's messed up. Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers is backing a proposed law to replace the word mother with inseminated person in a state statute. Right? It keeps going. It's just exactly what he said about, exactly what Victor said about accepting more and more. They just want you to accept more and more and more, because as it keeps going, and if you really follow the breadcrumbs of the woke trail, you start to see that it doesn't make sense as you keep going down the road. You start to realize this doesn't make sense. They just want you to accept it. Just keep accepting. That's it. It doesn't need to make sense. They just need you to accept things. That's the thing about when people want to amass power, right? Especially when it comes to Marxism and cultural Marxism and the communist movements and stuff. They don't need you to really understand. They just need the power. They're not looking for your understanding. They don't need you to understand things through and through, right? Same way the Democrats right now don't want transparency. They're like, what is all this transparency that Trump is trying to provide? This is crazy. We want to be in these jobs until we're 80-something years old. He can't even run again. What's going on? I don't want all this transparency. This is another, again, we're just bouncing around here. This is another clip I found really interesting, kind of towards the topic.
Benito Mussolini, Adolf Hitler, Donald Trump. Il Duce, der Führer, the Donald. The Romans salute, the Sieg Heil, the YMCA dance. The comparison is so absurd it practically debunks itself. Totalitarian control, messianic dictatorship, a cult of racial superiority, paramilitaries crushing the left at home, a Darwinian militaristic struggle abroad, the worship of war and violence, the mechanized attempt, let's not forget, to murder all of Europeans' Jews. If that sounds like America in 2025 to you, then I suggest you leave here and have a nice long lie down. In a second. Trump, I'm silencing all dissent tonight. Trump, you can absolutely say that Trump is illiberal, that he's want to fly off the handle over words that hurt him or democratic votes that do not go his way. But that does not make him a fascist. If he was in the UK, that would make him a Guardian columnist. Or maybe a member of the Green Party. The point that I'm trying to make is that if you stretch the definition of fascism in this respect, it's not just grim. It's not just wrong-headed. It's not just against the academic literature or the dictionary definition. It amounts to plundering some of the darkest moments of human history, exploiting the unique suffering of those who perished in gas chambers and on battlefields in order to score cheap political points. It also reveals an increasingly out-of-touch bourgeois left that has become so detached, so disdainful even, of working class people, but that whenever they get together and rebel against the establishment, it instantly assumes they have been whipped up into this by some kind of racist, fascistic demagogue. Even when many of those voters are black, are Muslim, are Latino, record numbers of whom backed Trump in November last year. That's a strange kind of white supremacy as far as I'm concerned.
Real quick, I just have to say with what he just said, again, it goes back to the fact that it doesn't have to make sense. They just need you to accept it. They just need you to accept that he's racist. They just need you to accept that Elon's a Nazi. They just need you to accept. They're not looking to make sense. That's not the goal. You know, they're not students in some hall like these guys are. They are politicians who, again, are looking to be in those positions until they're Nancy Pelosi's age, the ripe age of 169 years old. So they don't need you to understand everything completely. They just need you to accept things. And also there's a momentum to it. So the more that you accept, the more that you will accept. You know, the more they can take certain things that they want to happen, certain ways they want society to work, and they can wrap it up in lies that don't make any sense, and you'll just accept it. It's what they're looking for, which is why this guy says black, Muslim, Latino when it comes to Trump, but you will still have people say that he's racist. It doesn't matter.
If we accept this motion, we accept the dilution of fascism and its horrors. We defang that word, we reduce it to a swear word and a smear. We turn the graveyards of the 20th century into a playground in which to have our own political spats. That is an insult to the millions of people who lost their lives to fascism, particularly European Jewry, and I hope you will reject this motion as a consequence. Thank you.
Spiked. I've never heard of that. But yeah, I found that so interesting as he was talking about that. You know, doesn't make Trump a fascist, but again, they need you. They don't care about stretching out the word, because when he says stretching out the word, he just means insulting it. You're insulting what people really went through. You're insulting people who really had to live through a fascist dictator. They don't care about that. They're like, yeah, we'll disrespect the word. If we can put it on this guy and people and anybody will see him as that, we don't care. We don't care about disrespecting European this or that. Like, we don't care. Whatever. Let's go. You know, at one point they called, I believe it was Ben Carson, they called him the black face of white supremacy. It doesn't make sense, and they don't care. They just need you to accept that he was somebody to not listen to. He's black, yes, and we're all for black people, but not this one. This one's the black face of white supremacy. Got to stay away from him. They called Ben Shapiro a Nazi when he first came onto the scene because they didn't know he was a religious Jew. They wrote an article. He was like, what is going on? They didn't issue a retraction. It doesn't matter. They're not looking for it to make sense. They don't care about insulting history, you know? And again, it goes back to what he was talking about, not just of accepting more and more, but there's something else that Victor mentioned in that first clip. What was it? When he was talking about, I can't remember, but yeah, just very interesting stuff here. Very, very interesting stuff I found. I want to see what this spiked thing is. Do you know what spiked is? You ever heard it? So this is the same clip again. Calling Donald Trump. Who is this? Tom Slater. Huh. Such a cool name for such a British sounding guy, you know? Tom Slater. He's the editor at Spiked. Okay. More videos of this guy? I like these conversations. This is what they're doing out there in Cambridge Union. I'll say the House believes Trump is the second. Oh, it's like a longer talk. Let's check this out. Let's see.
Thank you so much for that speech. We're now going to turn to the final speech of the night, which is from Tom Slater. Order, please. Tom Slater.
So I gather there are a lot of Trump fans in. So this is going to be very easy. Now, I'm not here to defend Donald Trump, necessarily. I'm here, though, to defend the meaning of words, historical memory, and why that's important. And with that in mind, I just want to mention 3 names in sequence. Benito Mussolini, Adolf Hitler, Donald Trump. Il Duce, der Führer, the Donald.
All right, so that first one that we listened to was 2 minutes and 40 seconds. So I'm just going to go up to around where he finished. I think it should be around here.
He's many things. He's a right-wing populist. He's an opponent of illegal and mass migration. He's a bit of a culture warrior. He can be quite thin-skinned and conspiratorial, what a lot of Americans would call a blowhard. But try as I might, I am struggling to see the extermination camps or the goose-stepping gunmen killing with impunity, and I don't think my colleagues on the other side have helped me with that in a second. I almost feel sorry for the speakers on the proposition, and actually many on the floor. It must be exhausting, petrifying even, to see fascism everywhere. To see everyone who disagrees with you about immigration or gender as literally Hitler. I'm amazed any of you can sleep at night. The reason I think you can sleep at night, the reason that you're here arguing the toss with us rather than joining some anti-fascist militia in the Midwest somewhere, is I think deep down people know that this comparison is ridiculous. Ladies and gentlemen, I implore you to look at what the Trump is Hitler set do rather than what they say. Look at America. The Democrats have spent months, years saying that Trump was literally a Nazi in a spray tan, right? He was an existential threat to the American Republic. And then he won, again. And then with the election over, the scare stories were no longer useful. The Democrats, they didn't rush to the barricades. They showed up and made sour faces at the inauguration. I don't know about you, but if I really thought a new fascist era was beginning, I wouldn't have done that. By the same token, nope, for all of Trump's tantrums after the 2020 election, of course we should talk about that. That shameful spreading of conspiracy theories about the presidency being stolen from him, and that dumb, senseless riot that was January the 6th. He did step down. The peaceful transfer of power did happen. That's something that doesn't tend to happen under fascist regimes. And I think it's also important that we deal with a subtext of this whole fascism debate. There is this idea that fascism is a product of an excess of democracy. You know, countries can't be too democratic, otherwise they will become fascistic. That is a myth that really needs to die. Mussolini, Hitler, these were not people who ever won a majority in a free and fair election. They were invited in to power by desiccated elites because they feared working-class leftist revolution. So this anti-democratic subtext, which is something I'll come back to, is something we need to deal with. You can absolutely say that Trump is illiberal, that he's want to fly off the handle over words that hurt him or democratic votes that do not go his way. But that does not make him a fascist. If he was in the UK, that would make him a Guardian columnist. Or maybe a member of the Green Party, you know, the sort of people who've been going around in recent years taking ostentatious offence to various things people say and demanding a second Brexit referendum, another popular cause in this room, I'm sure, because they wanted us to get the right answer next time. So we'll take no lectures about rejecting democracy from the anti-Brexit set. I have noticed and noted the wording of this motion, right? That qualifier. Is Donald Trump a 21st century fascist? But the arguments that we've heard is that that seems to conquer all before it. That the definition of a fascist is one thing, the definition of a 21st century fascist is another, and it doesn't matter that they don't resemble each other at all. That's a ridiculous point and one that we should reject, I think. Look, we've heard a series of cherry-picked quotes, the odd policy, hand gesture. I tend to gesticulate a lot myself, so I'm going to keep it to a minimum because I know it's a dangerous game these days. But this idea that just because you see some superficial resemblance to Nazism or fascism, if you squint hard enough, that makes Trump a fascist, I think is facile. You can talk about the fact that Trump and his rhetoric about migration, meanwhile blithely ignoring the fact that in both of his terms, Barack Obama deported more people from America than Trump did in his first term. But because he doesn't do it meanly, because he doesn't sound off about it on social media, no one in this room seems to care about any of that. People may claim, as we've already heard, that there is some sort of, again, something suspect to a lot of the policies that he pursues. And again, you don't need to agree with everything that he does, but you have to recognise that the reason Trump has managed to get himself elected twice is not because people are stupid, it's because there are issues that, for whatever reason, he was the only one talking about. You take the gender issue, the idea that to say that someone who's gone through the benefits of male puberty should be allowed to punch women in the face in a boxing ring is obviously ridiculous. Everyone knows it's ridiculous, yet it had to fall to Donald Trump to point this out. I think people would be wise. Is that a point of information or just a beef? But anyway, the point that I'm trying to make is that if you stretch the definition of fascism in this respect, it's not just grim. It's not just wrong-headed. It's not just against the academic literature or the dictionary definition.
So, yeah, he's going a little bit into what he said before. Somebody cut up that clip pretty well. But very interesting. A little bit of MAGA, isn't he? A little bit MAGA, right? There's a bit of MAGA over there in the UK. It's very interesting. Wow, did Hank just send me a thing now? Why is this guy up still? It's 4:30 in the morning. This guy's awake. Should just throw him on the live. I should have just went live and just thrown him on. But it's very interesting, everything that he's saying, you know, about fascism, about Trump. And you know what I also find interesting about this clip is that in the UK, now, I guess they don't know. I don't want to assume that. Here, I'm just going to say what I think. I guess they don't know that it's possible to have people attack from within. Okay? And I guess maybe they don't know about Marxism. Maybe they don't know about communism. Maybe they don't think it's that bad of an idea. Well, obviously that guy in that room, you know, they don't feel that way, but he just doesn't see it in these things. In American politics, he doesn't see it. You know? He doesn't see all that happening. But when you're here, you see the politicians and you're watching everything happening as it's happening. You're not just hearing about it from far away. You really start to question what's going on and who really loves the country. You know, a lot of what he brought up kind of touches on what I was talking about, even about, you know, what I was going to title this, and that's how Donald Trump stopped the woke revolution. And that is what he's done. Hasn't stopped yet, but he's definitely slowed it down. He's definitely thrown a wrench in the whole thing. And honestly, I think his first term threw a wrench in the whole thing. I think it was supposed to go a certain way. If there is a script and the world is a stage, I think Donald Trump's first term was an improvisation that nobody saw coming. And things were supposed to get, you know, where they got in the past 4 years. I think that was supposed to happen a while ago. I think Donald Trump stopped that. And then they started getting back on that track, and he stopped it again. It's interesting to think about, you know? How many times have I said interesting? But topics like this do really interest me. Trying to think about all this stuff, you know? The whole fascism talk, why they do what they do, why they push the way that they push. You know, you can't chalk it all up to evil, you know? Or even if you know that the end result is evil, or at the core it is evil, it's good to know the pathways that it takes so you can build up some pattern recognition. You know, reading Rules for Radicals was a huge pattern recognition helper for me. So now when I see a lot of things operating on the left, I understand what's happening immediately. You know, he even brought up, and again, this is maybe something that these guys don't know. They're thinking about it like it's all just people calling Trump names for the sake of it or because they don't like him. And it goes much deeper than that. They're trying to associate him with certain things. They're trying to associate him with certain things. Even this guy who is a supporter in this room, he's a supporter. Even he's saying things like, oh, he goes off the handle, he's thin-skinned. It's like, this was not filmed, this was filmed 5 days ago, this video. He's thin-skinned? Are you sure? He got shot and he kept running. He got threatened with 400 years in jail and a couple of dozen years apiece for his children. You sure? He handled it all and won the election. He went against one guy. That guy dropped out. Then he went against another lady. And the whole time, the entire media structure was against him in a vicious way. You sure? After he got shot, they just said, nah, well, you know, it's kind of his fault for the way he talks. That's not a thin-skinned person that you encountered there. But again, they don't know that. I don't think they know about the psychological aspect of ops that happen, you know, that they try to run people through. I think they just think it's, this is just politics. And it's like, it's politics and some people are wrong, some people are right. I don't think they realize that that's not what it is. But again, I'm just bouncing around here, guys. I'm gonna stop it here. Actually, let's listen to a little bit of this.
Position to itself as proto-Nazi. It also reveals an increasingly out-of-touch bourgeois left that's become so detached, so disdainful even, of working class people, but that whenever they get together and rebel against the establishment, it instantly assumes they have been whipped up into this by some kind of racist, fascistic demagogue. Even when many of those voters are black, are Muslim, are Latino, record numbers of whom backed Trump in November last year. That's a strange kind of white supremacy as far as I'm concerned. This pattern of hysteria keeps repeating itself, and I think it is getting no one, regardless of what corner of politics they're in anyway. Yes?
Do you think maybe you've talked a lot about his words and how we shouldn't pay attention to his words and more so his actions, which seems like almost a concession that there might be traces of fascism in what he's saying? And if that's true, then don't you think that the left that you're demonising is the reason that he's not been able to manifest that fascism in real life? We're resisting it, so you're welcome. In a way.
I will be very clear. In his actions, in his words, to compare Donald Trump, a strange, unique political phenomenon by any stretch of the imagination, to, as I say, the most evil movements that we have ever seen, with millions murdered, I think is absurd on the face of it. And the point I'm trying... Give me a minute. The use and abuse of the F word, and Roger touched on this, has been going on for a very long time. Almost as soon as fascism appeared on the scene, people were throwing it around like muck to see if it will stick to their opponents or people they just happened to dislike. In that Tribune piece from 1944 that you referenced there, Roger, George Orwell was already taking aim at people who were robbing the word of its meaning because this stuff matters. He noticed that it was being applied to conservatives, socialists, Stalinists, Trotskyists, supporters of the war, opponents of the war, astrologers, women, dogs. These are all direct quotes. The word had been degraded, he concluded, to the level of a swear word. And my point here is that is a big problem. You might be thinking, okay, but does this really matter? Why get so exercised about the most powerful man in the world being called names? And it's a fair question to ask. Well, first of all, this isn't just about Donald Trump. This insistence that the populist revolts of 2016 and onwards were all about fascist demagogues manipulating people, it's a smear on those voters. It's a naked attempt to delegitimise their concerns, to delegitimise democracy, and it's an attempt to shame the working classes for revolting against an out-of-touch establishment. It doesn't matter what you think about Donald Trump, they were right to reject that establishment. Secondly, I implore you to vote against this motion because, as I say, words and historical memory matter. To say that Trump is a fascist, to allow his hysterical critics to pose as the heirs of the French resistance, is to denude fascism and anti-fascism of its meaning. Anti-fascism used to mean risking it all to fight Franco's forces in Spain, as Orwell did. Anti-fascism used to mean facing down Oswald Mosley's black shirts in the East End. Today, anti-fascism means whinging at the leader of the free world on social media or brawling with plumbers in MAGA hats in the streets. We should reject this degradation of a once proud tradition of anti-fascism. More importantly, and very finally, if we accept this motion, we accept the dilution of fascism and its horrors. We defang that word, we reduce it to a swear word and a smear. We turn the graveyards of the 20th century into a playground in which to have our own political spats. That is an insult to the millions of people who lost their lives to fascism, particularly European Jewry, and
Man, yeah, I have to second that. You know, the whole time he's talking about that, I'm thinking of AOC. I'm thinking about all Jasmine Crockett. I'm just thinking about all these people on the left, you know, Jamie Raskin, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and, you know, thinking about what the actual tradition, as he put it, of being anti-fascist actually was. It was risking it all, actually having to risk something, life and limb. And right now, with what's going on with Trump and the people who are opposing him, it's literally just millionaires who don't like the fact that tax dollars won't be something that they can just frivolously spend and rip through as they see fit, and that the people who they claim to represent are now going to know what it is that they're doing and are finding out that although they keep on talking about how they're doing things for them and they're fighting for them, what they've actually been doing is pillaging them. That's the new brand of anti-fascists. That's the new branding. The new branding of anti-fascists is millionaires who are trying to hide the fact that they're millionaires, pointing at people who are millionaires, saying, oh, too rich, or billionaires, whatever. Oh, too rich you are. Oh, look, regular people, so rich. Meanwhile, they're rich. And then they say, well, I'm not. Well, I'm different. No, you know, this is and now we're seeing that they're actually doing things, you know, allegedly enriching themselves, but at the very least not having to spend their own money on anything and being able to spend the American people's tax dollars on whatever they want. And that's personal and abroad, we're seeing. And then the new brand of fascism is stepping up to all those people and saying, I'm in charge now. I'm going to expose waste, fraud, and abuse. I'm going to do it the way I think I should do it. I'm going to sign as many executive orders as I can. I'm going to appoint this guy to do it. And nobody should stand in my way. Because I want America to be in the best place possible. And I want to bring down the national debt. And I want to see American industry, manufacturing, I want to start seeing these jobs coming back to America. And I'm doing whatever I can to see that done. And it's been 1 month and I'm doing as much as I possibly can. And I've brought in at least $2 trillion worth of investment. That's the new brand of fascism. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. But anyways, I'm just bouncing around here, guys. Like, subscribe, turn on the notifications. Other than that, I'm out.